This is very serious business, and it sure does not help that they seem to hate each other. Now, I'm talking about President Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And despite what both leaders say publicly about each other, tension between them is at a feverish level. And tomorrow is the big day. Prime Minister Netanyahu will deliver his controversial speech to Congress. But today, Prime Minister Netanyahu is speaking to AIPAC, the most powerful pro-Israel lobbying group in the United States.
You're here at a critical time. You're here to tell the world that reports of the demise of the Israeli-U.S. relations is not only premature, they're just wrong. You're here to tell the world that our alliance is stronger than ever. See, I'll be speaking in Congress tomorrow. My speech is not intended to show any disrespect to President Obama or the esteemed office that he holds. I have great respect for both. I have a moral obligation to speak up in the face of these dangers while there's still time to avert them. For 2,000 years, my people, the Jewish people, were stateless, defenseless, voiceless. We were utterly powerless against our enemies who swore to destroy us. We suffered relentless persecution and horrific attacks. We could never speak in our own behalf, and we could not defend ourselves. Well, no more. No more. The days when the Jewish people are passive in the face of threats to annihilate us, those days are over. Today, we are no longer silent. Today, we have a voice. Tomorrow, as Prime Minister of the one and only Jewish state, I plan to use that voice. Israel and the United States will continue to stand together because America and Israel are more than friends. We're like a family. We're practically mishpucha. Now, disagreements in the family are always uncomfortable, but we must always remember that we are family.
And joining us, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon. Good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening. Good to be with you, Greta.
Nice to have you, sir. Ambassador, can you tell me how far away from a nuclear weapon is Iran? Are we talking weeks, months, years? I mean, until I sort of have a sense of where they are, it's hard for me to sort of understand our level of urgency.
Well, I would say, if I have to make it short, I would say probably months. It's not weeks and it's not years. It's something in between. But the threat with Iran is that with unsatisfactory agreement, they will be able to retain all their capabilities, their potential. They're just suspended. And at any given time in the future, they can just break to a bomb. And also, a bad agreement will mean the end of the non-proliferation regime as we know it. And other countries who have been quite law-abiding according to their commitments, unlike Iran, will see that there is no ramification, and they would like to have the same capabilities, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Turkey or even your friendly neighbor down south here in Venezuela. This is why a bad deal is much worse than no deal.
Ambassador, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Iran would like to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, we know from the former president of Iran, he so famously said that he wanted to do that, and I don't doubt that. What I don't understand is that President Obama and Secretary Kerry repeatedly say that there will be no weapons program or even capability in some sort of deal. And I mean, we're talking about some sort of deal that, frankly, I don't know what the details are. Does Prime Minister Netanyahu not believe them when they say that, or does he think that they don't understand it? What's the problem?
Well, I have no doubt, Greta, that they have the best intentions, both the President and the Secretary of State. After all, this is their responsibility to make, first and foremost, American secure. And a nuclear Iran is against American interests and the worldwide community. But it's not just a matter of intentions. It's just a matter of how you ensure, how you make sure that Iran is neutralized from the potential. And this agreement, as much as I can read to it, does not eliminate the infrastructure, does not eliminate the potential, and most of all, it breaks all the regime of the non-proliferation, because if Iran is allowed to do what they will do, then all other countries will want the same thing.
Do you have, since I don't know what the deal is, and you know, they're not telling me, but I'm curious, is the United States fully, completely briefing Israel, the Prime Minister or whoever in an intelligence community in Israel, so that Israel knows exactly what the potential deal is, knows exactly what the U.S. knows about a potential program in Iran?
Well, I hope this is the case. I'm not privy right now to the what's going on between the officials, but certainly that would be in the best interest of both countries and indeed the entire international community, that the United States and Israel are not only on the same side, but also calculating together, consulting together, and I would say planning together, because without this miscalculation can be rampant, and more than that, the Iranians will toughen their position if they see a rift between Israel and the United States.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And while the Israeli Prime Minister is in Washington warning against a nuclear deal with Iran, Secretary of State John Kerry is in Switzerland starting a new round of talks with Iran. And despite the obvious chilly relationship between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Obama administration and the President, listen to what Secretary Kerry said just yesterday.
The Prime Minister of Israel is welcome to speak in the United States, obviously, and we have a closer relationship with Israel right now in terms of security than at any time in history.
And joining us, Republican Representative Lee Zeldin. Good evening, sir. And the Secretary says a closer relationship now in terms of security than any time in history with Israel. I don't know. He must not read the same papers I do.
Well, I mean, he says that the Prime Minister is welcome, yet the President won't meet with him. The Vice President left the country. 30 congressional Democrats decide that their place tomorrow is anywhere but their seats in the Capitol. As far as the security goes, the President is clearly negotiating a deal with Iran where they're looking to cut a deal just to cut a deal. And as the Prime Minister has stated, he's not against the deal. He's just against a bad deal.
And I would say that about the Vice President who's out of town. He's at the he'll be at the inauguration of the President of Uruguay. Meanwhile, the Obama administration, the President didn't go, neither did the Vice President nor the Secretary of State to Margaret Thatcher's funeral. So I think it's fair to think that that's sort of a phonied up trip. But I'll let the viewers decide that one. All right, Democrats say they won't go. Why?
That maybe there's some kind of a loyalty to the president. I would understand if the first 24 or 48-hour news cycle that there would be some discussion as to, who got invited before who. You could debate what the proper protocol.
But that's with the speaker. That's a fight that President Obama, if he's worried that like a manners thing, if he got snubbed about protocol, that's a complaint he has with the speaker. And fine, they can go duke it out in the schoolyard. We're talking about a head of state of our biggest ally on something so important as a nuclear weapons program.
And this is one of those speeches that right now you could go on YouTube, you could watch Churchill 70 years ago, 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, speaking to a joint session of Congress. This is such a historic time. And the leader of a nation, which is a beacon of freedom and liberty in a country, a region of the world that's riddled with radical Islamic extremism, state-sponsored terrorism, and Secretary Kerry is talking about how there's, this tight security relationship, and it's like he's over there negotiating a bad deal, and he's going to send James Taylor over there to tell Israel that they have a friend. I mean, the fact of the matter is, will Iran be able to pursue uranium enrichment? Will they be able to keep their centrifuges? Will they allow weapons inspectors in to ensure accountability and transparency? Will Iran, within 24 hours of a deal being announced, be refuting the terms of a deal? These are all questions. The devil's in the details. All
right. Well, actually, I think Secretary Kerry is a good excuse for not being there. He's at least having a conversation with Iran, whether he's working out a deal or not. But we're trying to figure out what's going there. I don't understand the president's absence, snubbing, because he's mad at Boehner. He's not mad at. It shouldn't be the prime minister. And the vice president's trip to Uruguay to me is weak. But what I don't understand is the rudeness of Democratic members or anybody who says to a head of state, we don't want to hear from you, when he comes here basically begging for his country.
There should be no conflict whatsoever as to where every member of Congress should be tomorrow. They should be in their seats, standing with Israel in this critical hour. We have...
Or not even just standing, just being there listening to him. I mean, having some good manners.
The Prime Minister has experience, intelligence, insight that is critically important for us to be able to do our job. We are a separate branch of government. We represent the American people who are also interested in standing strong with Israel. They should be in their seats. They should be paying attention, because the president is negotiating a deal that, listen, ICBMs, you don't need ICBMs for Israel.
Well,
they need ICBMs to reach us.
Well, they better not complain about it later if they weren't even there to hear what he had to say. They ought to at least, I mean, they may disagree with him, but they ought to at least hear what he has to say, so they have at least a factual basis. Anyway, Congressman, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
And President Obama is sending National Security Advisor Susan Rice and UN Ambassador Samantha Power to speak to the AIPAC audience. And in the midst of a very obviously strained U.S.-Israeli relationship, both Rice and Power trying desperately to diffuse the tensions.
The President is profoundly committed to ensuring that Israel is never alone. That's why today, security cooperation between our countries is not just strong, it's stronger than it's ever been.
The United States of America will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon, period. We believe diplomacy is the preferred route to secure our shared aim, but if diplomacy should fail, we know the stakes of a nuclear-armed Iran, as well as everyone here. We will not let it happen. There will never be a sunset on America's commitment to Israel's security. Never.
And joining us, our political panel, ABC News political director Rick Klein and the Hill's A.B. Stoddard. Rick, the president spoke before to AIPAC. He didn't want to go this time. He sent Susan Rice and Ambassador Power. Why?
Because if this was actually a family feud, this is the part where they're screaming at each other across the dinner table. And the administration, from the start of this, they felt like there was a personal, even, offense to the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu accepted this invitation, and they didn't want to dignify AIPAC or the Israelis with a direct meeting or with a high-level person showing up.
Which is so fascinating is that they are putting manners over something so important, you know, that they got snubbed. Okay, so let's say Netanyahu did snub them, or that Boehner did, or whatever. You know, get over it. This is nuclear weapons. But at least hear what he has to say.
This is a close ally. There's actually no excuse for Democrats to sit this out. I know there's only going to be 30 of them out of 535 people, but it's still, it's wrong. But two wrongs don't make a right. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has a policy to sell. If he's not campaigning for re-election and he's actually selling this policy, and he should never have turned down a meeting with Senate Democrats like Senator Feinstein, it's a mistake. He should get them in private or public whenever he can. What's interesting is what his message is going to do to the Congress and to the opposition to this deal. You have someone like Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia. He will not be attending the speech. At the same time, he's supporting legislation to force the president to submit the deal to Congress for a 60-day review. There will be opposition in the Congress, and the speech tomorrow could actually help galvanize and grow the opposition.
Why doesn't Prime Minister Netanyahu believe Secretary Kerry and President Obama when they say, or even Samantha Power, the ambassador, that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon?
They actually have different goals here. The stated American goal is that Iran can't obtain a nuclear weapon. The stated Israeli goal is that they can't have the capacity to make a nuclear weapon. They see that as a very important dividing line. And I think the way the Prime Minister laid it out today, he said, look, in the United States, you have security concerns. Here we have existence concerns. This is very much about whether the country can even survive. It's not just about are you worried about your own safety. It's can the country exist? So that, I think, explains a lot of the difference here.
Except for the fact, though, that it does. I mean, if Iran does have a nuclear weapon, that does start an arms race in the Middle East, because everybody's going to want one. Everyone and his brother's going to want one.
And obviously, no one wants it.
And that's more than it becomes. It may be potentially survival for a lot more than just Israel.
Of course, and our policy is exactly that. But according to the Prime Minister, it's got to be short of that. You can't even get into the realm where it's a possibility they could reconstitute a program and do it quickly.
Susan, Debbie Wasserman Schultz says she's not going, but Sergeant Tamarisi's mother is a constituent. She tweeted that she wanted her to go as her congresswoman.
You know, I think that everyone has to focus tomorrow on what the Prime Minister says and what it does for the negotiations over the deal. President Obama was interviewed on Reuters today, obviously came out just in time to sort of pre-butt the Prime Minister, saying the only way to stop a bomb is to make sure that you're watching over them, babysitting them, and keeping enrichment low. They're saying no enrichment at any level is acceptable. They're literally looking at two different goals. So we have to see where the deal goes after the speech.
As soon as we find out what the deal is.
Right.
There is that.
We don't even really know what it is.
Panel, thank you.